All right, hi everyone. This is March 2nd. This is session 5. And we're going to start with reviewing the homework like we usually do. And then what I previously planned on was going to the group projects next, but since there's only 3 of us, we might not do that. But let's just start with reviewing the homework. So alphabetical order, yeah, Marcia is before Mike, right? MA. So what have you been up to? Did you run into any pain points that we should review?
Yeah, it's nice. I've been using ChatGPT a lot more, and I feel like I'm learning a lot that way. I'm stuck on local storage. So I read what ChatGPT said, and then I copied it and I put it back in, and I was like, can you explain what this means? And then they explained it. I'm like, I'm still not sure I understand.
Both of these links will help you actually, but I guess I'll copy this one.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And Mike was mentioning that he tried to study everyone else's trial by fire code and use it as reference code and figure out how to go that way. One thing that he noticed is that each of the students have substantially different code, which I think is a great thing. I think that's great. As a course creator, it really bugs me when 20 people come out of a boot camp and it looks like they just copied each other.
Less of what, more of how.
Yeah. Okay, great. So over to you, John. So what have you done recently? Did you get stuck on anything? Did you learn anything kind of interesting that you wanted to share? Do you want to brag? Maybe you got way ahead of us?
A little bit of all, because I got stuck on getting the delete button to work for the posted forms. And that led me into a big rabbit hole about database management and querying languages and regular expressions. And it actually was not hard. So it got me distracted for a while, but I got it to work. I want to brag that it works. And my students, or some of my students, likes how it works because it's not persistent. So once I refresh the page, it clears everything. And yeah, where I should have spent some time going into design with JavaScript, I spend that going down the database rabbit hole. So yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so you have a server running. Do I understand that right?
No, it's actually not related to the page. I want to, so that would bring me into my question for today. Are we doing anything back-end related in terms of managing databases? And that's what I'll be looking forward to. Otherwise, I don't mind leaving the page as it is and starting a new project to showcase some database knowledge.
Awesome. The answer is that our third project is when we formally plan to go full stack and have database persistence. So I asked you 3 things. Did you get stuck anywhere? Did you learn anything? And is there anything you'd like to brag about? You said a bit of each. You said you got stuck on delete, is it?
Yeah, just getting that delete button to work as designed. That took a bit of fixing everything.
I do think, Mike, I want to chat with you a little bit before we dive into local storage, because I don't want to dive into local storage if we're still missing some of the JavaScript. You need to know a little bit of JavaScript before you get into local storage, because you're going to act. So what is local storage? It is a front-end database. It is a front-end database, which almost sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. You're going to interact with local storage using JavaScript. Okay, cool. So with that basics in place, do you want to share your screen or send me the link to your repo and I can open it? I'm trying to assess where are you at with JavaScript. Have you done any JavaScript yet?
Yeah, no. If you're thinking about where I'm gonna have to be spending a lot of time after this looking at the video you sent me, because I'm behind on that.
Okay, you can, and that's fine, but do you want to take 10 minutes and we can work on it together for like 10 minutes or so? Are you at a place where you can type and stuff like that, or are you mostly listening today?
I can type and stuff right now. I just think I don't want to slow everyone else down, because I do think I'm actually far enough behind right now where it's not going to be constructive for anyone to mess with what I have, because I have nothing when it comes to the JavaScript part.
Okay. All right, let's figure out when we can spend some time to work on that. What I'm worried about is if you think about the spread of where people are at in the course, one thing that we can do is the people who are straggling, we can bring them closer to the front, and that would get everyone more on the same page. The other thing we can do is we can deal with some of the cutting edge topics without bringing anyone to the front, and that actually increases the spread. Do you see the issue? So we can dive into local storage without recapping any of the JavaScript. But I do have the office hours right after the session. So typically there's like the class session is an hour and then there's 30 minutes of office hours. So if you're free for that period, maybe we talk about it there, or I guess you can do something offline. But I am hoping to avoid you isolating yourself basically. Because if you isolate yourself,
I completely understand that. No, I'm luckily I have no life and nothing going on this week, so I'm planning to catch up for missing last week's. Hopefully, honestly, later this afternoon, and then honestly tomorrow-ish, if I have any questions, I should be able to get everything to you, so that hopefully by next week's session, I'm on the same page as everyone else.
Got it. Okay, in that case, we can go to local storage. So, Marsha, how did you sort of get involved? Like, where are you at with the local storage? Did you write some code, it's not working, or did you just mostly read and you haven't really written anything?
I mean, ChatGPT kind of showed me what the code should look like, but I did try to understand it, but it was just more so like on the other ones, like on the JavaScript script functions and stuff, I can usually like, okay, this means it's going to do this and this. I can't do that with the JSON parse local storage get item, like, and it's like creating like not even variables, but using things that I didn't even know were defined, or they're not defined, or maybe it's defining them in line. Like, I don't really know what's happening. It's long. It's a lot of code that I'm not.
Let's do this. I think if that's where you're at, and thank you for sharing, then instead of asking you to share your screen, it might be more productive if I just basically demo. And then everyone can follow along. And then maybe after that, we do ask you to share your screen or something. Does that sound good?
Okay. Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, so here I have a head tag. It's missing a body. We know the browser these days will automatically generate your body and your HTML doc type. If you're missing it, 20 years ago, you would have just broken your screen. But here I'm adding the body, and the reason that I'm doing that is because we like to have our script tags at the bottom of the body. So now I've added a script tag. The first thing that I would do is I would just do sort of like a hello world, just to make sure, like sanity check that the thing is working. So here I'm going to say feat alert on load. So this script will run and it will generate an alert on the page load. I can go to my repo, refresh the page, and see alert on load. So I know the index was pushed. While this builds, so it's going to take a minute to build. In the meantime, I'm going to see if I have this on my local computer. So I'm going to try to clone this down on my local. Now, why did I do that? It lets me avoid waiting on this yellow thing. It's literally faster than waiting on the yellow thing. I can go over here to my code, and I think Isaiah mentioned something about this at our last session. But basically, one of the many benefits of cloning the code locally is that it makes development faster. And so the way that I'm going to get into a useful state quickly is I'm going to skip the creation form, and I'm going to have 2 hard-coded articles. All right, cool. So I have these 2 articles, and I'm just going to do the delete button, and I'm not going to have the create button, and you'll still be able to see the point of local storage. Basically, the point of local storage, it's going to be a front-end database. So currently, I have these hard-coded blog articles. What we want to do is not hard code them. We want to save them in the database. That means that we are going to turn it into JavaScript objects And we are going to create these articles dynamically based on the JavaScript objects. The trick is these JavaScript objects will live in local storage. They won't live on a server database. So that's what local storage lets us do. And why would we do this? The main reason is for offline applications. Like you don't want to connect to the internet. Maybe you have a journaling app. Does anyone use, what's the Notion? Does anyone use Notion? Or like Evernote or like any of these where you basically take notes. Maybe use Apple has like an Apple Notes as well. You want to be able to like save your notes even if you're not connected to the internet. And maybe I want to close my notes app and open it again. I still want to see my notes. So that is kind of what local storage gets us. I'll do this with early binding. So I will give these two hard-coded articles a delete me button, just like this. Delete this article. And I will give them an explicit ID. This is not really necessary because the order is going to be deterministic between these two. So I could just use the 0 and the 1. But this is still a good idea because in the future, I might add an article sort feature. And I might sort by name or sort by what's the most recently created one. And basically, the order of them might change. So I don't want to rely on order. I want to have an explicit name. Again, it's not technically needed. We call this future proofing. That is like you're anticipating a feature that might come later. So IDs are better for that. And this can even be, that's fine with the number 0. It would actually be better if it was like the string 0. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So here we will have, oh, look at that. Look at that. Copilot just knocked it out of the park for me. That was GitHub Copilot. I don't know if y'all have Copilot installed. VS Code extension, Copilot. And it basically auto-suggested this, which is exactly what I want. Okay, so now I have delete this article. And we see that it works. I'm going to make a save right here. And we're still not using local storage, but we're getting close. So this is a new feature. It's the delete article feature. Now what I want to do is I don't want to have these articles here at all. I just want to use data in my JavaScript. So here I'm going to use var, which is it's a global variable. I don't want it to be block scoped. I want it to be global. And I'm going to transform these into data. This will actually be an array. That's a list. And I can call this articles. And then I will call this articles not in local storage. This is going to make sense in a minute, I swear. Oh gosh, Copilot is really killing it. Okay, so this is a data representation of the articles. Does what I just said make sense?
Data representing the articles.
Yeah. So previously we had a title, how to make banana bread, and that was in an H2. Now it is a title attribute of a JavaScript object.
Okay, so it went from HTML to JavaScript.
That's what we're doing. When we say a data representation, we mean that it is represented as some variable. And in particular, we usually mean an object when we're talking about things that can be an object. When we're talking about anything complex, anything which would have properties. So like a person, a place, a food.
Yeah.
We we basically always consider these to be objects. And they are in contrast to primitives. What is a primitive? It's a thing that it doesn't have properties. It's just the thing itself. That's why we call it a primitive.
Mm-hmm.
So a word might be a primitive, like the word banana. The word is a primitive, but the thing is an object. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the word banana, it's like a string. I could just say banana here. But that is in contrast to a banana object, which has properties. It might have the color yellow. It might have the property of being bruised or not being bruised. It might have an age. It might have a size. It might have a weight. All of these properties, if you want to group them, the way that we group properties is through an object. And the brace here is the syntax that indicates a single object in JavaScript. There's other ways to do this in other languages. The bracket means a list. So here you can see I have a list of objects.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we talk about kinds of objects, JavaScript doesn't know about that. JavaScript doesn't actually understand kinds of objects. That is something TypeScript understands. So I could say, recipes. This is a list of recipes. That is the type of list that this is. Does that make sense? Now, it gives me an error, and that's because you can see you can only use type annotation in a TypeScript file. We're not in a TypeScript file, so I can't do that. So here's one of many problems with JavaScript is I never know what the stuff in my list is. I never know. Someone could put crazy property, true. I could have like a list that's like, it's all about recipes. And then there's this one other thing that's like, it's not a recipe at all. And it's in the same list. So I just have a list of like things that I have like a list of all kinds of things. I don't have a coherent list anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of many problems with JavaScript. And you'll see in the logic that I'm going to do, if I'm going to make an article, I need you to have certain properties. I need you to have a title, and I need you to have content, and I don't want you to have other stuff. We call this a schema. That's a schema is a collection of properties and their kinds. So I have a title is a string. I have content is an HTML fragment. What I've just defined is an article schema. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm following.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So there are no regular schemas in JavaScript. The concept just doesn't exist in JavaScript. So what we have to do instead is we have to either trust and assume, or we have to implement tons of validation functions that are always running to check over and over and over. Like, is this object a recipe? Is that object a recipe? Like, and if. So those are our options in JavaScript world. In TypeScript world, we get the additional, much better option where I can just do that. Okay, so that's all background, and that's all explaining what is this data and what I'm about to do with it. What I'm about to do with it is create an article in the HTML, render an HTML fragment. We have how to make banana bread. I also want these colors. I also want, so I'll have title color. And we'll just leave it at the 2 so that we don't get too complicated. So you can see now I have the color itself as part of my data. Okay, so let me delete these. And we're still not quite to local storage. What we're doing right now is the rendering step. I just ran format on this code. That's Command-Shift-P, and I can type the word format. Okay. So we're going to start with articles not in local storage. So we're not using local storage. What I want to do is function render articles. And I'm going to define some function, and I'm going to immediately invoke it. What that means is, as soon as the page loads, it's going to call the function. No one has to click anything. It just runs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. And so what this is going to do is it's going to get a reference to the articles section. Okay, and you can see that, oh, I picked name. I probably should have picked ID. Let me change it to ID. Either of those is fine, but I think ID makes more sense. Okay, so I'm getting a reference to the articles section, and I'm going to populate it. Copilot is kill of the game. So I'm just going to loop through. This is an article in articles. I'm going to loop through this list, which means it's going to run some code on this object, and then it's going to run some code on this object, and so on. Let me include a bit of bad data so you can see what happens when there's bad data. I'm not going to do that. Never mind. Basically, I would just skip it, or I would throw an error. Those are my options, but I don't really want to do either one of those right now. So we have title, color, and steps. That looks good. So what is this doing? We have created a div. I don't want to do that, do I? Mike, do you know what I should create instead of a div here?
Div is just a division. Let's see. You are creating an article, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. That's
okay.
Right. All right. So Copilot gave me a ton of help, but it also got a ton of things wrong, right? So that's why it's super important that even if we are using an AI tool like this, we go literally line by line. And even inside of a line, there's multiple expressions. So I have the left hand, the operator, and the right hand. I need to inspect manually every single generated expression for correctness. So the keyword looks good. Variable name, I don't like this variable name, Mike. So we fixed it so that we're not creating a div and we're creating a proper article. So now, don't you think that the variable name is misleading now?
Yeah.
So what would be a better name in your opinion?
New article?
Sure, works for me. So we're going to go through and replace. And when people tell you that AI is replacing developer jobs, it's not. It's just changing what we do. One of the things we do now is we fix the AI's code. So this is part of the work you can expect to be doing. Also, I think that it's sort of cluttered and hard to read. So I'm going to break these up and introduce line breaks before each constant assignment. Okay. So now we can call these blocks of code. Marcia, have you heard the term of a block of code?
No, but I mean, it makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, it's just a group of lines of code that go together. And so here we can see that this block of code is building the new article. And after we're done building the new article, we're going to like do something with it. So Mike helped us to know that like we should be calling this an article. What about these two lines, Marcia? Do you remember what we had before? I'll just tell you, like before we never had a H3. So what could go in these two lines that would make it better?
We had paragraphs. So I don't know if we need that for, I think that was, oh, you had a list actually in your paragraph, I think.
Yeah. The list was outside of a paragraph, but that's okay.
Okay.
The list is being dealt with later.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah.
We'll do that later.
Yeah.
What's going on? Let's just take it expression by expression. What does this piece refer to?
How you're styling the color of your new article.
That's right. So over here, what color, like what color would that be talking about?
Your sky blue, your light blue.
Yeah. So that's the article background color, right?
Mhm.
So we are referring to the article background color, and then we're using this operator. Do you know what this operator does?
Makes that it,
That's right.
yeah.
So this is technically called a setter. It's going to set the value. And you're right. In English, we would just say it's making the value. So this is a setter, and it's a command operator. It's not a question. It's not asking. It's not evaluating. It is telling. It's saying,
Okay.
this thing that I'm referring to, you are going to be this thing over here.
Okay.
So what does this right hand of the expression mean?
It is finding articles to Google Storage article.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's two things wrong with this expression. Can you think about what either one of them are?
Well, title color would be wrong because we're doing background color.
Exactly. So the first thing is, hey, I wanted this to be my title color, but you made it my background color. By the way, as a junior engineer, you can totally expect to be working on bugs like that. Like someone's going to be using, like, your product manager is going to be like, dude, I told you to make like the font black, not to make like the whole like background black or something like that. So this is sort of routine front end junior level tasks. The other issue has to do with the reference to the article here. Look at the way that we are looping through articles. And does this then seem strange to you for any reason?
Yeah, are we finding a property or in the article? Maybe properties are a word, but would you need or okay.
Basically, it basically, and we can go to an index based. We can go to an index based loop if that's more familiar to you. But basically, like, it would be way better if I do this.
Okay.
Because I already have the article here. Why am I not using it?
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Cool. So that's it for this line.
Well, we're still background color is equal to our title color.
Yeah. So we want to affect the title. So where is the title? Where could that be? This is the title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you know how I fix this? Do you know how I could fix this? But instead of saying how to fix it, let me ask this. There's going to be multiple steps to fix it. What is the first step towards making a title? Just like, how do I make a title?
I guess I'm not understanding that question completely. Hey, Mike knows.
And I might have asked it poorly. All right, Mike, how do I make a title?
Don't jump to Mike knows. Mike might know. I assume you need to get a title, specifically like from an input of the user, right?
Nope. We already have it in our data. So there's no user interaction here. The page is just going to load and show the articles from the data.
I think we were making a new one. Well, yeah, if we already have it, then you just said it was
We just do our article.title.
Yeah. That will give you the data. So let's go look at the data.
Okay.
So here's article.title, and that refers to this data. This is a literal string. That is not what we mean by heading in HTML world. Does that make sense? So they're related because I'm going to want to set this as a value of that heading. I'm going to want to put that text there. That's true. But it's not the whole thing. Like I can't just take this and just put it like right there, right? So what am I missing? What do I need to make?
Your element tags, your
Yeah.
H1 or H2. I mean, they have H3 there, but I don't know. Forget what you used.
So I have an H1 here.
Oh yeah. Okay, so you'll put your H2s for your
Yeah, so we can use 2 or 3.
articles.
Either one is fine. But is this the way that I should do that though? Because I want to stick a color on there. How can I stick a color on here? John Rose has been awful quiet. Maybe we should phone a friend.
2 things come to mind. Set it as a style on the style page, or I remember doing it inline. So I think it's after the semicolon you can put in the style.
Good. Both of those work. There's also a third way. I'll go ahead and give you 3 options, and then you all can tell me which way you'd like.
All right.
So you're right. The first option is that I can use a style, like a proper CSS class. So I could say class equals, what might this be? And then I will put the color here, article dot title color. Okay, that's one option. Another option is that I can use an inline style. So here I can say style, background, color, and do the article title this way. Okay. And the third option is that I don't set enter HTML at all. I make a element like this, and I style it like this. Or instead of style there, I could do a class name here. There's also something called a class list, which is basically like you can have like 5 class names. And so you can add it to a class list. But it's very similar to making a class name that has spaces in it. Okay, let's do a reverse alphabetical this time. So Mike, that would make you first. Do you have a preference between those options? If so, why? And if not, why? You can't just say, nah, no preference.
So you're not just trying to get a title here, you're just assigning a color to the title?
So what is the end goal? What we want to do is we want to have this show up. We want to have that show up, and we want it to come from local storage, not because someone just put it there in the HTML.
Okay.
So working backwards from that end goal, what we're doing right now is
I just want to be clear though, the H3 article.title, that got you the actual words, right?
This has the actual words. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I thought that's what you were asking last time there. So you're saying either either a separate article where you're doing the style, or here you're just making the title for all of them would be in that color. Is that correct?
Let me go ahead and list out the options. So one option is inner HTML string setting approach. And the other option is the create element approach. Okay. And then within these, we can style in 3 ways. Inline style, class names, or not IDs. Inline style, class names, or or nothing. I guess there's just two ways. Style or, yeah. Okay, so there's kind of four options. There's two ways to make the title, and then there's two ways to style the title when we have it. Does that make sense?
Right. So the inner HTML is creating that title.
Yep, that's what we're doing right now. Does that look good to you, or do you want to change it?
That looks good to me. That makes sense to me.
Okay. Okay, so we have this title. The question is, how, if I have the title text now, how do I color it?
So the only thing I'm thinking of here is that in this loop, you'd be setting everything to white with what you just deleted, correct?
Yeah, that was just to show how this object approach works. I don't think we should actually do that. Like, this was like some fake color. Super duper red. So that was just to show how the object and property relation would work if we went that route. But we're not going that route, right? We're going this route. So we have picked this one. And by the way, why did we pick it? Did we just pick it because it makes more sense, basically?
To me, yeah, you're just setting the title there inside the H3, whereas the create element is going to grab it.
That's a real reason, by the way. If someone asks you in programming like why you made a decision, we do value and we care about what we call readability. Readability, the ability to read something and it just makes sense when you read it. Developer intuition, and then we also talk about ease of reasoning. Ease of reasoning. So
would this option also make it future-proof?
No.
Okay.
If you want a future-proof option, this is not a good approach.
Gotcha.
And the reason for that is because we are fixing the data. We are fixing the data type, right?
Okay.
So it has to be a string. It has to be a string, which is going to limit our things that we can do with it. Fortunately, it doesn't limit it. It doesn't limit us in a way that matters here. But if we get to the place where we're talking about like interacting with other systems and system design, making you use a string all the time is like not ideal.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay. Well, let's go over to you, John Rosa. Unless Mike, if you had a preference between these two. So we picked this, but now we need to come down here and pick this piece. And Mike, on this one, you can feel free to punt it over to John. Even though I've just ruined.
Well, here I would be saying personally inline styles over the class names, mainly because once again, it's just, I guess, readability for me is that the inline style, when you're doing a loop where you're already setting everything, the inline style I like more. The class just, like I said, I like the inline style.
More complexity, isn't it? The class brings in more complexity, doesn't it? Because I say, okay, you're pointing to this class, but what does the class mean? Now I have to look up the class. So we also call that, so that's technically it's called complexity. There's an additional lookup step. And then we also call this indirection, which means like, basically there's kind of like a useless variable. I have to go look up something when I could just use it right now. We call this indirection, or I'm just throwing technical words at you just to get you the vocabulary. We might call it an extraneous abstraction. So there is a problem in programming when you use too much abstraction. It becomes hard to actually do anything. Let me put in the notes before I forget all these. So some reasons to use inline styles. There's a bunch of reasons not to, but we're talking about the reasons to do it. Readability, ease of reasoning. Classes introduce an additional lookup. They are therefore a source of complexity and may be an extraneous abstraction. Specifically, if you never reuse a class, it is a pointless abstraction. So we love the rule of three. We love the rule of three for this. We love the rule of three for this. If I had like 3 different things that I wanted to be background blue, at that point, it makes sense to make a background blue CSS class. If there's only one thing that's ever going to be blue, why am I making a class? Just call it blue. And so these are the, there's actual architectural principles behind this. I know we're just talking about CSS, but this applies to programming in general. I have no idea what button I just pushed. One architectural principle is called YAGNI. You ain't gonna need it. So some people who are like mid-level developers, they get so used to like creating objects that they just like, it's a muscle memory. They just like make an object. And we need to push back on that if we're going to be better than a mediocre developer. We need to push back on that and say, only make it when it makes sense. And so that's this idea of YAGNI is you ain't going to need it. Like, don't do it if you don't need to. And then dry is don't repeat yourself. This is a reason that we don't want inline styles. We don't want inline styles because we don't want to be repeating ourselves. But if you only do it once, you're not repeating yourself. Okay, so we often think about these two kind of like a seesaw, dry versus YAGNI, like they're pushing back on each other. So we usually go for dry because for almost any useful function, you're going to use it a bunch of times. But you want to balance that with the realization that like sometimes there are one-offs. Sometimes there are one-offs. Okay, that was a fun rant.
Don't die on any hill.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go with inline style here because there's only one title. So we don't need to be able to reuse the title style. That's our justification anyway. That isn't actually necessarily true because here's the truth. Dark goldenrod is currently a title color, but in the future, I might have body color. And that might also be dark goldenrod. So at that point, it would be a bad idea. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, but we'll go with this for now. And so we will do it this way. And I don't want the background color. I want the text color. So here is article.title color. Well, that was a bunch of fun. We've spent that much time to get our article right. I'll go ahead and jump through some of these. It should be an ordered list, not an unordered list. Step in steps can be reduced to step of steps, which is going to let us do that. So now I append the step item. So I'm appending my steps into my ordered list. It's ordered so that it will be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to cook in order, right? We want to bake after we mix the bread or whatever. So it needs to be ordered. Then we come down here, we have a button. The button says delete. If you click it, it will delete the article. That looks good. Finally, now that everything is prepared, we will append the article into the article section. This looks good to me. So now I should be able to refresh the page here. Oh no, I didn't see anything. So what's going on there? So I'm going to alert with the article section ID, which is basically confirming whether it got selected. It says articles, that means the selection worked. Okay, so the selection worked. Here, I'm going to console.log the article title, which should show up in my developer tools. And I should see multiple titles. And here's the problem. So I get one title and then I get an error. Okay, so now I've found the issue. Type error cannot read properties of undefined. And it even gives us a line number, line 49. Right. This is not the right way to say that. Step of article steps. Step of article.steps. Okay. Cool. And now it shows up. And I have my titles. They're the right color. Okay. So where does local storage comes in? Local storage comes in when I click this delete button. And now we'll make another variable called articles to use, which is going to be, yeah. If there are any articles in local storage, we're going to use local storage. Otherwise, if local storage is empty, I'm going to use this one by default. Does that make sense? And in fact, I don't even need this variable at all. And this can be a const the way that we've written it. Okay, great. So everything is still showing up so far. No. Articles from local storage is not defined. Right, I just deleted it. Articles from local storage is just like that. And I should see the default ones because there's nothing in local storage right now. Cannot read length. Okay. So what the logic is doing now is it's saying, hey, I'm looking in local storage. It's a global variable. I don't have to create it. It already exists. It exists in the browser. Just like the word document exists, we call these built-in variables. So local storage, here's the keynote. Local storage, like document or window, is a built-in object. We don't create it. We just use it. Browsers create it. It is like a front-end database. Okay. So I'm getting all of the articles out of local storage. Well, there aren't any. There aren't any. So this expression evaluates to false. Can anyone tell me why? Can anyone tell me why this expression evaluates to false? That is because this is empty. It's null. So null in JavaScript, there is the literal Boolean false, but there are also falsy values, such as empty string, 0, undefined, null, and null. Okay. These values are called falsy. They're all treated as false in if conditions. And this is a ternary syntax, which is basically an if condition.
So is it that the local storage is not there, or there's just nothing in the local storage that is there?
Local storage is there, and
Okay.
local storage is there. So this object, it exists, and it has a function on it called get items. Just
Okay.
like the document object has document dot get element by ID.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of doing that. It's like document dot get item. So there's no HTML involved, but you can think about it like it's going into an object and it's getting another object out of that object. I guess
Okay.
like,
Fair
you ever
enough.
see those Russian dolls where there's like a doll
Yeah,
inside of it?
yeah.
That's local storage.
Gotcha. But for
Um,
this particular scenario, we just have one hollow doll.
yeah. Or at least a doll that has no articles in it. Maybe a grocery bag is a better example.
Gotcha.
You coming home from the grocery bag, you have all sorts of things. You have some nuts, you have some pecans, you have some water, some juice. And I say, give me all of the potatoes in your bag. Well, you don't have any potatoes, right?
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
that would be null or zero or undefined.
Got it.
Good. And so that will be treated as false in this ternary. So basically the way the ternary works is if it's true, it gives you the first thing. If it's false, it gives you the second thing. That's the way the ternary works. It's just a very short if-else condition. And so that's how we're still getting articles not in local storage here. So I'll make a commit, and then the last thing we'll do is when I delete, I'm going to save to local storage, and we'll see that the delete is semi-permanent, we could say. Semi-permanent until I go clear my local storage, basically. Actually, I don't even want to check length because maybe there are 0 saved in local storage, and that's on purpose. Good. Because I can delete all of them in my local storage. So the feature here is articles to use, I'm going to say. All right, and now here, yeah, basically it's these 3 steps. So the first thing I do, so previously I just deleted off of my HTML, right? But now after I deleted off my HTML, I want to save my change in the database. But it's a front-end database, it's local storage. So I deleted off the HTML. Really, I should be doing this at the end because if there's an error with my database, I don't want to change the picture. I don't know. That's debatable. That's debatable. Let's leave it like this. This one will give the user the faster feedback, which is nice in a different way. So we delete it off of the page, and then we get the articles from local storage, and we are filtering them to remove. This thing keeps showing up. I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to select it without having that giant pop-up. We're getting the articles, and then we're filtering it so that the ID that I just deleted is not in the list anymore. And then after we do that filtering, we then save it. Set item. We then save it back to local storage. And this is the key, so that when I refresh my page, this won't be empty anymore. It's unless I deleted all of them, if that makes sense. Here, let me make a third. How to make a third article. That can also be dark blue. Write words. It's just one step, one easy step. Okay, so here I have 3 articles, and we're going to be able to delete them down to 0. And then ideally, I have like a clear local storage buttons because otherwise the user just can't see articles anymore after that. But that will conclude the demo, I think. It might already work. Let's see. I feel like I'm forgetting a step. Oh, this is the step that's wrong. Here I will say, or articles not from local storage. So if there's nothing, if there is, not the word or, the operator or. Add a little bit of spacing just to make it easier to read. So the first time that I click this button, there won't be anything in local storage, so I want it to use this one. But every time later, it would be using this one. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So here we go. Let's see if this works. I deleted it. Oh, cannot read properties of null reading filter. So this didn't work. My filter didn't work. Let's see. Add a debugger here. That's null, as I expected. But I should still be able to get the or. The or should still work. Yeah. So why did it complain about this? Oh, it worked. I don't know. What the? Maybe I forgot to refresh the page or something. Anyway, it works. So you see now I'm refreshing. There's only 2. And let me delete the agua fresca. And now I'm refreshing. Oh, there's still 2 here. Nope, something is wrong here. Let's see. Refresh my page, click the delete. And this should have only 1 article remaining. It has 2.
You keep deleting the agua fresca, and
Yeah.
that's the one that's there. I don't know, like that's just observation. Like
Yeah.
you clicked delete, but banana bread went away.
Oh, I think my filter condition is wrong. So this is saying article not equal to ID, but it never would be. But yeah, I don't have IDs. I don't have IDs on these. That's my problem. Okay. Sure, we can even use a non-numeric ID. That could be maybe clearer. Okay, and so down here, the object is not equal to the ID. It should say the object dot ID. Go ahead, Marta.
You had IDs on them. I'm just making sure that was when they were hard coded, right?
Yeah. When I turned them into data, I got rid of them. So that was the problem. All right, so here we are with 2. Now if I delete this, it's back. So my filter is somehow still not working. Let's see. My updated articles, there are 2. And that is because articles from local storage is 2. Now these 2 are how to make banana bread. Oh, okay. So yeah, even though I changed my code to add the IDs, I didn't change my local storage to have the IDs. So what I need to do is clear my local storage. And I can just do that like this. Local storage dot clear. And now it should if I get item articles, it should be undefined or null. Yeah, it's null. Okay, great. To clear it, we can use, and that might help you on some websites, by the way. If you go to a website and it's like bugging out, if you've been there before and it's like bugging out this next time you visit it, You can go to your dev tools and run localstorage.clear, and sometimes it fixes the website. So we're back to 2. I'm expecting 3. Let me do something different. Instead of using the ternary, I am going to say if there aren't any articles in local storage, I'm going to immediately save the full copy and just use that. So if there aren't any articles from local storage .set_item, not in local storage. Okay, and then down here, I don't need this ternary at all. By the way, why does it use the JSON parse? That is because JSON parse turns strings into objects, and local storage is technically a string. If you look here, this is technically a big string. That's the reason it uses JSON parse. Okay, so I think I fixed this. We'll see. Let me clear one more time. Now I have 3. Local storage also has 3. There's third article, so the third article's in there. I'm refreshing, it's working. Let me delete this middle one. Ooh, it deleted the wrong one. We got some bugs, y'all. Let's see. Oh, I'm passing the whole article when I want to pass the article.id. So if I change it to ID, get element by ID is not working because did we never attach the ID? New article.id. Should be there. Let's look on our HTML. I'm inspecting this HTML. Oh, see, that's the problem. Why is it doing that? ID equals article.id. Does that look better?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's deleting the one after.
Yeah, I think that's what Marsha was talking about.
Ah, okay. I got it. The reason is because it's looping through, so it's only binding the last one. So if I click any of them, it will delete the last one. Because when I go to the loop, this onClick, it's binding and rebinding, and the final binding is whatever the last article was. So this just doesn't work, actually. What we want to do is have the delete button dot name. We can use name or some other attribute that we're going to use later. How can we get this to work? We want the function to reference to itself. So this has ID. And this button here needs to refer to that ID.
Would it be and I'm coming purely from a language point of view, delete button ID or delete ID of the button's article?
I think it might be tackier than that. I think what we should do is get to the parent of the button. From the button, get to the parent of the button.
Okay.
And say, I did the late binding. I was just looking at my code, and it's different because I did the event listener, and so it seems different, but it used the word closest.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that kind of how mine does the correct one in this language or in this, like, not language, but the code I went with, I guess? If that wasn't closest, would mine delete the wrong one?
I don't think so. Closest is just what I was talking about. I think this is a little better though. This is a little better. So Martha, that would work. In fact, that's the same idea that came to mind, but I think what I've done just now with the binding is a little better. Why does this work and the other doesn't work? I don't know. I'm gonna have to ask ChatGPT myself. I think it's because it's in a closure, but I'm not sure about that, so I want to check. Gosh, getting into the advanced topics. Why does this work, but this doesn't work? Issue. I am binding over 3 articles, and the second approach always binds only the last article. Yeah, it's because it's in a closure. Well, this is like a super advanced topic. How do I describe a closure? Let's ask ChatGPT. Maybe that's going to do a better job of describing a closure than I would.
But I appreciate that you're not glossing over it. That's nice.
So yeah, it explained this a very good way. Okay, I think the most intuitive way to think about this is when you use this dot bind, it's creating a new function. It's creating a new function. And if you do it this way, it's talking about the same function. So when I loop over this way, it's connecting the same function to all the articles. Where if I do it this way, it's 3 different functions that do the same thing. Kind of. Does that make sense? Okay, so when I'm talking about the same literal function, it ends up binding to the last one. Well, now all 3 of them are going to bind to the last one. But if I make sort of 3 copies, they each get their own copy. I think I did a really poor job of explaining that, but I think that's about as good as I can do right now. But you can, yeah, learn more about JavaScript closures. Advanced homework, I guess. Also, you don't necessarily need to know this because Marsha, what you said would be totally fine, and that approach doesn't use a closure at all. So that is a tree traversal approach. It's just saying, hey, who's my parent? There's no closure there because any of the 3 can say who's my parent, and it's going to do the right thing. Does that make sense? Closures and tree traversal. That's also like DOM traversal. I think there's yeah, closest or next or child. Those are some of the tree traversal methods. Basically, if you like think that you're in this HTML, P, their parent is body. P next, I don't remember if it gets the next paragraph or if it would get the H2, but it's one of those. And then you can also talk about like section has a first child would be this one. It's its first child because it's inside of the section. Cool. I think we are pretty much at time. Any other questions before we wrap up? No? We're all going to have local storage working next time?
Fingers crossed.
You know, that's the point. Yeah.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Yep.
I'm going to add one more button which does reset local storage. Cool. That's a little bit maybe better, do you think? Okie doke. All right, everyone. Happy weekend. See you later.